All right, welcome back. This is now episode number 4 of Invisible Enemy, talking about COVID-19 in the early days, based on the book that I am currently working on. Got pushed a little bit back to the back of the line as I work on the Kyle Rittenhouse book, and finally making some headway on that, some progress on that, and then looking at the voter fraud 2020 book as well. And who knows what else may be in store here. So still, excuse me, still getting my voice back. So I do apologize for that. We're going to go ahead and get right into this one here. So let's go ahead. We're going to continue on. And what we are continuing on today is with March 25th. So this is about as far as we got last time. So we're going to look at some of the events, some of the things going on March 25th. So March 25th, 2020, the Department of Defense enacted a 60-day stop movement order for all DoD uniformed and civilian personnel and their sponsored family members overseas. This measure is taken to aid in further prevention of the spread of coronavirus disease 2019, to protect U.S. personnel and preserve the operational readiness of our global force. Building upon previously enacted movement restrictions governing foreign travel, permanent change of station moves, temporary duty, and personal leave, this stop movement order will also impact exercises, deployments, redeployments, and other global force management activities. Approximately 90,000 service members slated to deploy or redeploy over the next 60 days will likely be impacted by the stop movement order. So this is a big deal here. And this is from defense.gov newsroom. And so I got that link there as well. And I will be putting this rough draft here up on my website, whatistruth911.wordpress.com. And so you'll have access to this if you want to check this out. And I will make sure to put all of the past videos, the playlist, any future videos will all show up there too. So, and you can go and check out those links. Hopefully they're still active. A lot of them I was able to pull and get for us. So hopefully that will help as well. Now, I thought this is pretty interesting because a lot of these things are coming to a stop, including the exercises, the deployments. It's like there's something really, really big here. You can see how seriously they're taking this on March 25th, 2020. So I thought that was pretty important. Any movements that the government was making, the Department of Defense, I should say, were making at that time, I thought were pretty relevant, and wanted to make sure that it was all documented. The thing about this book you'll find here, maybe this is how all of my books are and how they all will be, is, it's very textbook, it's very bullet point-y, it's not a story, it's not for entertainment value, there's nothing really entertaining that I find about this stuff, but it's more for educational purposes, to understand what we were being told then, to remind you, because you may already know what we were being told then, as opposed to what is going on now. And you can see how the situation has gotten worse, or has gotten better, or has stayed the same, I guess. But just to kind of document all of these things that were happening, and how many soldiers, service members that were slated to deploy or redeploy over the next 60 days will likely be impacted by the stop movement order. So I think that's a pretty big thing. What do y'all think about that one? So so another big thing that kind of happened, and you can read that right here, according to a spokesman for Italy's Civil Protection Agency, as of March 25th, 2020, almost 75,000 people in that country had tested positive for the coronavirus, and they had 7,500 deaths that were reported. Pretty interesting numbers there. And again, I don't know false positives. I don't know if the deaths were if they had pre-existing conditions. Later on, we kind of find out that it seemed like a lot of them did. I don't know what was going on there at that time, how accurate the numbers that we were getting were. I always feel like the numbers that the government gives out are a little more conservative. They don't want to create a panic and everything. So I get that, but better to be accurate, I think. Hey, people are going to panic. They're going to panic no matter what. So, and we saw that, right? A lot of people did panic and went and bought all the toilet paper for some reason, bought all that stuff. But who knows? Now with what's happening with these truckers, who knows how bad things are going to get. Anyways, way in the future as far as now. But okay, so there's a contributing journalist for NBC News, and what she says is that the Italian doctors are being forced to choose who will receive desperately needed ventilators and who won't. The ventilators are a very, very big key. If you're on a ventilator with COVID, I really think that's totally different than someone who is just having a flu or just has a cold, but they test positive for COVID. I really think there's a big, big difference. I don't know what all of your thoughts are on that, but that's kind of, been kind of the litmus test that I've been going by. Maybe that's not the most accurate to go by, but it's kind of what I've been thinking like, wow, okay. Because anytime we get a flu, anytime we get a cold, the first thing people may ask you, this may happen to you, first thing they may ask you, is it COVID? Did you get tested for COVID? How do you know it's not COVID and all that? So it's like, well, I get tested. If it is, what can I do? If I'm on a ventilator, maybe that's a little bit different, a lot different, I would think, than just having a cold and, okay, well, I just got to kind of wait it out. But if you have COVID and you're on a ventilator, I think that's very, very serious. And we know people who have survived that too, thankfully, thank God. She also writes that authorities in the country are also investigating whether a Champions League soccer game in February dramatically increased the spread. And we see some of these things where we're seeing a lot of this now. It's probably been happening. I probably just am late. I'm tardy to the party once again, but kind of seeing all these sports figures, especially in soccer or what they call football, dropping during games and stuff like that. There's a lot of videos out there. Facebook is trying to really hide those. It's not easy to share. If you add them to a playlist or add them to a saved video or something like that, it makes it very hard for people to share those videos. So it's become kind of a challenge finding those videos and then sharing them too. And so if Facebook is doing that, I'm sure probably YouTube is even worse at doing that too. So that's pretty interesting there, and that is from NBC News. The title of that article is Coronavirus Update, Senate passes $2 trillion stimulus plan, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so for whatever reason, during the daily press conference at the White House on March 25th, 2020 at 3:25 p.m., President Trump was asked how many deaths are acceptable. Now, I mean, if you know anything about the way that the media was treating President Trump, if you were following it during those years from 2016 to 2020, man, I mean, the questions they would ask, that's stuff they would never ask Obama. They would never ask Biden, probably not even Bush. And we know how bad Bush was. We know what Bush did on September 11th and all that stuff. And you go back, like the way they treated President Trump just seems so different than the way that they have treated every other president. Just about every other president, I think. I mean, as far as I've seen here, but I mean, what type of question is that? How many deaths are acceptable? What do you think he's going to say? It's just such a ridiculous question. And you can kind of guess on who would ask that question. But of course, here's the answer. The president's answer was clear: none. So those are the types of questions the media attack Trump with, and it's always ongoing. It's still even going. He's not even president now. I'm sure if they could try to impeach him now, they would figure out some way to go back in time and impeach him for a third time. If they could figure out time travel, I'm sure some of them would be in favor of that. Now, in the coming days, those attacks would get worse, and they do. I mean, they really get worse. The media is just all over him, and not in a constructive way, not in a productive way. It is a destructive way, and it really exposes who this media is and their hatred for President Trump, their anti-Trump stance, anything Trump is for, and they're kind of against. So having watched all of his daily press conferences during that time, yes, I came to the conclusion that it was not a good idea to joust with President Trump. He's got their number. So every question they would ask him, off topic, on, you can't ask Biden any questions that are off topic. You can ask Trump anything, and he'll give you an answer. So they should not joust with him. But go back and check out the press conference from March 25th, 2020, and you may be surprised at how they kind of treat President Trump during that time. Pretty interesting stuff to me, at least. So I think it's really true. If you're going to joust with President Trump, bring your A game. Bring your A game, because you're going to need it. You're really going to need it with that guy. So during his March 25th press conference, President Trump was asked about a tweet he made earlier that day. Mr. President, you had tweeted earlier linking the closing of the country to your election success in November. Is this Easter timeline based on your political interests? And President Trump asked, what do you mean by success? And the person responds, the lapdog responds, you said that the media wants the country to remain closed to hurt your odds of being re-elected. Here's what Trump clarifies. The media would like to see me do poorly in the election, which is true. And then he's asked, sir, lawmakers and economists on both sides of the aisle have said that reopening the country by Easter is not a good idea. What is that plan based on? Fair question. Just so you understand, President Trump responded, are you ready? I think there are certain people that would like it not to open so quickly. I think there are certain people that would like it to do financially poorly because they think that would be very good as far as defeating me in the polls. And I don't know if that's so, but I do think it's so that that there are people in your profession that would like that to happen. But your own medical experts did not endorse that plan yesterday. I think it's very clear, President Trump continued, I think it's very clear that there are people in your profession that write fake news. You do, she does. There are people in your profession that write fake news. They would love to see me for whatever reason because we've done one hell of a job. Nobody has done the job that we've done. And it's lucky that you have this group here right now for this problem, or you wouldn't even have a country left. President Trump also made sure to remind everyone about the origin of COVID-19. It came out of China. Asked how many deaths were acceptable, the president responded with none. President Trump was asked about the testing process and why we were not testing everyone. Here's his response. We have some big problems, President Trump admitted, concerning the virus, but it's confined to certain areas, high density areas. So why would we test the entire nation? 35 million people. With that being said, I'm going to say it again. We tested far more than anybody else. We have the ability to test. I mean, we've come a long way from an obsolete, broken system that I inherited. We have now tested with the best tests far more than anybody else. And when I say anybody else, I'm talking about other countries. No country is even close. So this is interesting here, where he's talking about these confined areas, because that's what we were seeing. In the rural areas, it was not happening, right? We weren't seeing this thing where you needed to test, but he's saying, why would we need to test everyone? That's where they are now. Under Biden, they want to test everyone. They want everyone to get tested in order to work. So it's not like it's a punishment now if you don't get tested. Under Trump, it was nothing like that. He makes it very, very clear. No intention of testing everyone. It was not needed. It was not necessary. Why would you want to test everyone? So I think he makes a very valid point there in that. And even, it's smart. You could say, well, 1 year later, there's more and this and that. It's like, no, the more that the coronavirus went on, they had to have these variants because it was not, the numbers were decreasing. So with the variants and all that stuff, they wanted to make it seem like the numbers were going up. Oh, it's a new variant, so now we got to start all over. They wanted to continually start all over with the coronavirus. This is why it's so good to look at these early days to see what they were doing, what the game plan was for these people that wanted to shut down this country, to destroy this country and keep it shut down. This is the game plan. Is it a coincidence that they just happen to have this plan and hey, here comes along this virus and we can use that to our advantage? You have to be the judge of that. So, I mean, he makes it very clear. There's no reason to test everyone, right? And they were saying that in the very beginning. Now it's not just about tests. Now, now you have to get the vaccine. So whether you test or not, they just want the vaccine. It's so ridiculous. The whole thing is ridiculous. They came out with a statistic, I guess, yesterday. President Trump continued, and I heard from Dr. Birx, where it's for eight days here, more than 8 weeks in South Korea. And South Korea has done a good job, but we did it in 8 days more than South Korea did in 8 weeks. That's a big number. And we're getting, I said before, exponentially better. Every day it's going up substantially. We have an incredible apparatus built now, but no, I don't want to test 350 million people. I think that's ridiculous. So you may have a good point. What do you guys think about that one? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on what you think about testing everybody. Should we all be tested? Mandatory or no? Now, regarding immigration, the president reiterated his stance. They have to come in legally. They have to come in through merit. We're not having the people that you're talking about coming into our country. Next week, a reporter asked, next week when the 15-day period ends, remember, we're still in this 2-week, 15-day flatten the curve garbage that they were creating back then. Next week when the 15-day period ends, what should we expect then? A reporter asked. Are you going to extend it for another week or two? Well, we'll be talking. President Trump responded. I'll be speaking with Tony Fauci. I'll be speaking with Deborah Birx. I'll be speaking with some of the people that they like and respect, and they're going to bring along with them. We'll be speaking to everybody. I'm not going to do anything rash or hastily. I don't do that. But the country wants to get back to work, Trump reminded this reporter. Our country was built to get back to work. We don't have a country where they say, hey, let's close it down for 2 years, which is pretty much what they've tried to do, right? We can't do that. I would say by Easter, we'll have a recommendation, and maybe before Easter. And at the end of the 15th day, or even during day 15, I think we'll have some kind of a recommendation. But our country wants to get back to work. Country needs to get back to work, unless you want to shut the country down. And it's clear that some people would love to do that and have been trying to do that for years, way before COVID-19, right? So now we're going to look at March 26, 2020. As of today, President Trump said during a press conference on March 26, FEMA has shipped over 9 million N95 masks, 20 million face masks, 3.1 million face shields, nearly 6,000 of the ventilators, 2.6 million gowns, 14.6 million gloves, and we're spending more every day. And we've got tremendous amounts of equipment coming in. A lot of great companies are making equipment now. The ventilators, obviously, they take a little longer to make. But we have a lot of companies making them, and we're going to be in great shape. We took over an empty shelf. President Trump continued, we took over a very depleted place in a lot of ways. As you know, the testing is going very, very well. And that was obsolete and broken. And we fixed it. And it's been going really good. And I think, very importantly, the stockpile, we're really filling up. We're really filling it up. And we fill it up rapidly and we get it out. Sometimes we have it sent directly to the states instead. That's from his presidential briefing. All right. Yeah, I need to find this source. This is interesting. Department of Labor. Okay, so in the week ending March 21st, according to the Department of Labor on March 26th, the advance figure for seasonally adjusted initial claims was 3,283,000, an increase of 3,001,000 from the previous week's revised level. So the claims, look at all those claims, huge increase right there. All right, so here is a tweet from the U.S. Labor Department, still on March 26th there. And that's where I got that from unemployment insurance weekly claims, initial claims. So let's talk about the uninsurance claims. I need to make that clear in here. So that needs to be adjusted. Sorry about that. Didn't want people to think those were COVID claims or anything, but this is strictly related to the unemployment. Look at that number. I mean, that's a big number. It's up 3 million people for unemployment. So they did it. They shut the country down. COVID, whoever is responsible for it, knew exactly what they were doing and got exactly what they wanted. Maybe not exactly, but got pretty, they made a big dent in this country here. Pretty interesting stuff. Very sad. So insured employment was 1.8 million about for the week ending. And so, I mean, these are just crazy numbers. I think I was still working during this time too. So, okay, here's what they say. Got that report. Okay, so I did add the PDF. So hopefully the PDF is still there. I need to add that PDF somewhere. So this marks the highest level of seasonally adjusted initial claims in the history of the seasonally adjusted series. The report continued. The previous high was 695,000 in October of 1982. The previous week's level was revised by up to 1,000 from 281,000 to 282,000. The 4-week moving average, 998,250, an increase of 765,000. Wow, from the previous week's revised average. So, and those numbers are just horrible. Previous week's average was revised up by 250. Right? Jeez, this is crazy. So a hopeful article by Foster Kumar reminded me of how powerful and resilient the human body can be. Posted on futurism.com, the article provided a translation of the statement. Vice Mayor Rimini Gloria Lisi made to local Italian newspaper, Rimini Today. The vice mayor spoke about a man named Mr. P. This is an interesting story here. So if you never heard the story of Mr. P, here it is. If you have, you know exactly what I'm talking about here when I say the reminder of how powerful and resilient the human body can be to anything with God's mercy, with God. According to the story on March 26, 2020, 101-year-old Mr. P was discharged from the hospital after recovering from COVID-19. A week earlier, Mr. P was admitted into the hospital after testing positive for coronavirus. He saw everything, wrote the vice mayor. Mr. P. Guerrero, hunger, pain, progress, crisis, and resurrections. Once over the 100-year-old barrier, destiny has put before him this new challenge, invisible and terrible at the same time. Another reason for the name of the book, I guess, but invisible enemy. That's what it is, right? It's not really visible. I can't look here. I can't film coronavirus right here. Maybe under a microscope and all that you can, right? We have all that, but I can't see it. The naked eye, my eyes cannot see it. Even if I had my glasses on, I wouldn't be able to see it. So obviously with my glasses off, I can barely see anything here. In a few days, he became history also for doctors, nurses, and all health personnel. A hope for the future. A hope for the future. A hope for the future of all of us in this body of a person over 100 years old. He survived coronavirus. This was a big deal because all we were hearing about was if you get it, you die, done. This guy's 101 years old. He survived the virus within what, a couple weeks here? Pretty crazy. A week. 1 week. What's his secret, right? That's what I would want to know. We talk about patient zero. What about patient Z here? This guy, patient P, I guess. His name is Mr. P. So a hope for the future of all of us in the body of a person over 100 years old when the sad chronicles of these weeks mechanically tell every day of a virus that is raging above all on the elderly. And he did it. Mr. P made it. The family brought him home yesterday evening. Very good one. So I got that link there. There's a couple links for that story that I was able to find. So those are added to this here. Hopefully you don't have to go in the Wayback Machine to find them, but you never know. So even though Ruben Hoover was 99 years old, he recovered from COVID-19 within 17 days. Mr. Hoover lived in the Hollyburn House retirement home in Vancouver. Another patient, another guy, 99, retired, recovered here. He tested positive for COVID-19 on March 11th and tested negative on March 25th. Mr. Hoover's daughter, Linda Horpel, was not expecting her father to recover. That's what we were being told. I mean, it just goes to that old thing. It's like, you get it, you're done. It's just not the case. So here's what Linda says, the daughter. I didn't really think a 99-year-old in a wheelchair could possibly survive it. He did. She said in a CBC News article. So those cases were out there, and there could be, these are just the ones that we know of and just the ones that are put in the newspapers. We don't know how many others may be out there that we haven't heard of and may never hear of. We also don't know if these were false positives. We also don't know, a lot of things like that. So, but these are great things. I'm glad that there was some news media that were willing to cover this, and like, it's not all doom and gloom. People can live from it. We can survive. We can move on. The power of the human body here because of God. We assume now that he's gotten over this, Harper continued. As long as nothing else happens, he'll carry on to his 100th birthday. There you go. And I had a note here, find out what cured him, because I want to know, like, what was this guy doing? If it wasn't a false positive, what was he doing during that week, 2 weeks, whatever, between March 11, 2020 and March 25, 2020? What was he doing that helped him survive that? Or what, did he just wait out the process? How healthy was this guy? Did he have any pre-existing conditions, et cetera, et cetera? Those are all the valuable stuff. I love hearing these stories, that they recover, but those are the cases we should be focusing on. Okay, why did they recover? And the media will not focus on that. They just wanted to shut everything down. They were going along with this agenda that some people have to shut everything down, to silence Trump, to break Trump's economy that he put people in to the right spots to help build, to help get back. And all of a sudden it was broken. Coincidence? Well, you got to decide that for yourself as we move on here to March 27th, 2020. So now we get to the coronavirus stimulus relief package. And of course, it's really difficult. If you follow whatever news you follow, one's going to say it's great, one's going to say it's bad. And there's so much into this. How big do you think this package really is? How big do you think this? And do they even have time to read all this stuff? Always curious about that. It's nothing new. Why would we expect anything different during this, right? Well, we should, but we don't. We get the same old, same old. So how serious are they even really taking this? If it's a pandemic, if it's a big crisis, how serious are they taking it when they treat the bill just like a lot of these other things where they throw all this garbage in there? If it was so serious, killing so many people, destroying everything, a lot of this other extra things, the Green New Deal stuff and all that other stuff that had nothing to do with anything that specifically related to coronavirus, they wouldn't include all that. So to me, it shows how seriously they're not taking this virus. But let's look at this. As of March 27, 2020, there were 100,000 cases of COVID in the United States, with 14,708 new cases, 862 recoveries, and a national death toll of 1,579 people. That same day, Congress finally passed the $2.2 trillion coronavirus stimulus relief package. And you can read that if you want. It's huge. So Finally, so it looks like around March 27th in the book is where I finally start to focus more on the numbers. How many cases are there? How many new cases are there? How many recoveries are there? And how many deaths are there? So you get all of that right here as of March 27th, 2020. The death is pretty small, right? I mean, it's pretty small compared to the cases, 100,000 cases, 1,600 deaths. Pretty interesting stuff. How many of those deaths are specifically just COVID, no pre-existing conditions, et cetera, right? You can get into all that stuff, but this is when I finally started to realize, hey, I need to focus on these numbers, because these numbers are going to be very important here, especially once we get to the recovery rate and all of that stuff. Once I learn more about it, it's pretty interesting. So Congress, March 27th, Congress finally passed a 2.2 trillion coronavirus stimulus relief package, but not before House Representative of Kentucky Thomas Massie tried to force a recorded vote on the bill. This is important too. You want a recorded vote. You want to see who is voting for it, who is voting against it, and who is not even showing up to even vote. So here's what Massie says from Kentucky, House Representative from Kentucky. I swore an oath to uphold the Constitution, he tweeted, and I take that oath seriously. In a few moments, I will request a vote on the CARES Act, which means members of Congress will vote on it by pushing yes or no or present. Very important. Massie was denied a recorded vote. Now, this is interesting. He's Republican here. And they have the Congress, or so we thought, or they should. But obviously, Democrat, Republican really doesn't matter. I mean, can't really get too deep into that. They're both playing the same game at a certain level, but we do have good congressmen on both sides. I want to believe congressmen and women on both sides here. The libertarians, we need more of the third parties in the Congress for reasons like this, I think. I mean, why was he denied this request for a vote? I mean, you can use your own mind for that. Assume whatever you want. Your guess is as good as mine. My guess is not a very positive one. Massie was denied the recorded vote and received a large amount of backlash for his efforts from both Democrats and Republicans, including President Trump. President Trump didn't even, support him on this. But I mean, this is important. A yes or no or a present, I think, would be a very good thing, a very big deal. But on the Rush Limbaugh show, Representative Massie stated, "We will never know who did and did not vote for the CARES Act." Here's his quote: "It will remain a mystery." That's from the Rush Limbaugh show, 3/27/2020. "This is just a warm-up act for them," said Massie, adding, "We should expect similar bills in the future." Sounds like he was right. Sounds like he was right on the money. Now, it seems like President Trump is getting some very bad advice as far as that. I mean, it's really not, he really has no say if they do a vote or if they don't. But the fact that he weighed in on it and was against this is something. I remember hearing some liberals talking about this stuff, and I was like, what are they talking about? And I went and looked it up and listened to what Massie was saying. It's like, wow, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. You want to vote. We need to know who votes yes and who votes no. We do it on everything else. There's no reason not to do it on this. We need to know, because that will stand the test of time. But he's right. Now it's going to remain a mystery forever. I don't blame Trump for that, but I disagree with Trump, not with Trump's stance. But that's his right. He can have his own stance on it. But I just don't think that's a very good stance on it. But here's the fact: it will remain a mystery. And there's nothing, even if Trump agreed with it, there's nothing he could have done about it. He wanted to push this thing through. I think that was his reasoning for it. And we're going to get to that as well. Here we go. All right, so President Trump then signed the CARES Act in the Oval Office of the White House. "This is a very important day," President Trump began. "I'll sign the single biggest economic relief package in American history. And I must say," or any other package, by the way, "it's twice as large as any relief ever signed." Interesting. It's 2.2 trillion, but it actually goes up to 6.2 trillion potentially. So you're talking about $6.2 trillion bill. Huge. Nothing like that. And this will deliver urgent, needed relief to our nation's families, workers, and businesses. And that's what this is all about. This is what America is all about, Dr. Fauci. And this is kind of my early introduction to I had no idea who Dr. Fauci was, what he was doing. I just saw him. There's this short little dude standing behind Trump. He's there and blah, blah, blah. This is before he starts going on CNN and pretty much, I wouldn't say bashing President Trump, but saying something completely different than what Trump was talking about. And we can see that happening more and more now. So Fauci said, this is what America is all about, a bipartisan approach with your leadership to do something that's sorely needed by the American people. Dr. Birch and I and all of our medical people here are fighting the virus directly, but the virus has an impact on the American people, both directly by illness and death, but also indirectly, because many of the things that we have to do to suppress the virus has a negative impact because of what we're doing. To give them relief economically is absolutely essential. President Trump then signed the CARES Act, and you can see that. The remarks are right there. Now, about an hour later, President Trump held a press conference to expand on the package of the bill and answer questions from the press. This afternoon, I invoked the Defense Production Act, said President Trump. This invocation of the DPA should demonstrate clearly to all that we will not hesitate to use the full authority of the federal government to combat this crisis. This afternoon, President Trump continued, I also signed an executive order investing and very, very strongly investing the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Homeland Security with the full authorities available under the Defense Production Act to respond to the outbreak of the terrible virus, the invisible enemy, as we say. So when I was thinking about naming this book, that was one of the China virus, the invisible enemy. Those were kind of the two that I went back and forth on. So nothing set in stone yet, but pretty interesting. The invisible enemy gets mentioned a lot. And, the only reason why I would hesitate in calling it the China virus, I don't know if it came from China. That's the official theory. That's the official story from what it seems like. Of course, they don't really talk about that. They never want to talk about where the virus came from. When do you hear Biden talking about that? You know, when do you hear all these people that are so scared and so worried about the virus and never really talk about that? So anyways, the New Jersey Army National Guardsman Captain Douglas Lynn Hickok was the first United States service member to die from COVID. Army Captain Hickok was hospitalized on March 21st and died on March 27th, 2020. Interesting timing here for where he died. We also lost New Jersey National Guard Captain Douglas Hickok this weekend, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy said during a COVID-19 briefing on March 30th. He was a drilling guardsman and physician's assistant originally from Jackson, New Jersey. He was a Pennsylvania resident at his death and passed away in a Pennsylvania hospital. And while he will not be counted among our state's COVID-19 losses, their loss hurts no less because of that. And the reason why, because of where he died. I mean, he'll be counted somewhere. I mean, it's not like he's not going to be counted at all. But I just got off the phone with his wife, Marianne, bless her and bless them. I sent her and Tammy's and indeed our entire state's condolences to her and their children, Alexander and Robert, who I spoke to with her as well as Noah and their family. Pretty sad stuff here. The United States Department of Defense also released a statement about the captain's death. So there's the statement there, the full, and I really tried to include a lot of these documents. I wanted to include that, keep my thoughts. This is, I mean, obviously that's what the video's kind of for, where I can just share some of my thoughts if I have any on this stuff. But a lot of what the book is meant to be is just the documents, and that's it. So maybe as we go on, that may change a little bit, but here's some more about March 27th. The Office of the Secretary of Defense wrote a memorandum to all Department of Defense personnel stating the reasoning for the, quote, imposed restrictions on all domestic and international travel. We understand the impact of delaying PCS moves, modifying training exercises, and temporarily closing some installation services. These decisions are necessary to mitigate risk to you and your families while we work to ease the burden on the force as much as possible. And then there's the full memorandum with the PDF there. So again, I try to include the actual documents here. It may be hard, especially if it's in book form, maybe hard to really read, to see, but it was very important to include that as well. Let's see. So I think we will stop right there at page 38, and next we will continue on to page 39, and we're going to get into some interesting stuff. Interesting stuff here about COVID-19. All right, God bless you all, and thank you all again for joining me here. I'll stop the screen share as well. And this was episode number 4. We'll come back next time, episode number 5, and we'll continue on discussing these very important things here regarding this case. So God bless you all, and until then.
Hey, what's up everybody? This is Ross from Planet X Filmworks channel on YouTube and the Zodiac Files True Crime series. Check it out, and shout out to Greg and the Gray Stage channel. Their content is amazing.